Um, it's about 8:05 a.m. and we are okay to go. People are still joining, but we can go to go. Hello everyone. Good morning from Bangladesh and welcome to all participants from near and abroad for joining us today. Myself, Jubaida, facilitated this webinar on behalf of Agile Tour Bangladesh, Women in Agile Bangladesh, and Business Agility Meetup Bangladesh. We're really excited to visit our guest, Maria Matarelli, who is going to share her experience on business agility through agile marketing. In a short note, Maria is a agile coach, professional speaker, facilitator, consultant, certified Scrum Trainer, and also founder and president of Formula D. With a background in IT project management and specialized in professional coaching, Maria has consulted management executives and individuals on streamlining process, increasing efficiency and organizational change. We will explore with her next 60 minutes. If you have any question or query, you can put it on the chat box. We will answer on our question answer section. To know the upcoming program, please join our meetup group. And to find our recorded session, feel free to subscribe our YouTube channel. So without further ado, I would like to hand over to Maria to continue. Hello, Maria. You can take over the section right now.
Hey, thank you for the warm welcome. Hello, everyone. It's great to be here with you, here to talk about Agile marketing. So I'm just curious if you could comment in the chat, where are you joining us from today? What city, what country? I am in St. Petersburg, Florida in the US. So curious where everyone is joining from today. If you could comment in the chat. All right. Dhaka, Bangladesh. Awesome. Curious if everyone is from the same location or if we have other locations. Mexico City. Awesome. Very cool. Hong Kong. Wonderful. It's always exciting to see the different locations where we have people joining us from, and also hearing and seeing the interest of people in learning about Agile and different applications outside of IT and specifically here in marketing. All right, and several others from Bangladesh. Thank you everyone for sharing. I see India as well. Excellent. Now I'm curious, have you ever applied Agile outside of software development? Comment in the chat, have you applied Agile outside of software development? So if you've applied it yourself or if you've heard about Agile applied outside of IT, comment in the chat in which way. Have you heard of Agile in marketing before? Have you had it in a company using it for HR or any other applications? So comment in the chat, have you experienced applying Agile outside of IT, or have you heard of it being applied in different ways? I see a comment here. So yes, regular operations and farming. All right, very cool. Yes, from Michael with marketing, HR, and product development. Excellent. Okay, more marketing experience. Wonderful. All right, so keep the comments rolling in. Appreciate hearing some of your experience or any thoughts as we go throughout this presentation. So would like to share a little bit more about, what are we talking about here when we're talking about business agility and agile marketing? These two things really do come into play. And I would like to ask the host if you could enable screen sharing or make me a co-host so I can share my screen so that I can share some PowerPoint slides here. All right, so we see some people in the chat have heard about Agile applied in different ways, but not seen it firsthand in reality. Gotcha. All right. So I'll give just a moment. Okay, there we go. Let me go ahead and share my screen. And when I have a couple of visuals for the presentation today. So awesome to hear there's a couple of different applications where people are applying Agile. It's something that we see where Agile works. Many of us, we see that Agile works. We know that it works, and there's so many different applications that we could apply it to. So what I want to talk about today is this concept of getting full-end business agility through applying Agile to marketing. Because a lot of times people will talk about how can we be more Agile in our organization? And the challenge that a lot of companies run into is they are maybe getting more results with Agile applied in the way that they launch products to market, but then they go into traditional cycles for marketing and they plan out big campaigns all up front, and we may not be getting the full benefit if we go into a traditional marketing campaign. So if we can be agile in how we market, that's going to help us not only develop the product, but then also be agile in the development and in how we reach our customers. So I want to share a little bit more about that today. I'd like to also introduce Nick Cementa, who is a co-founder of the Agile Marketing Academy with me. Nick and I have worked with many companies and also marketing agencies on applying Agile for effective results. And so there may be a couple of stories I might reference. So I want to give you a face with the name. So it's been exciting to be able to just see the incredible results that you can get when applying Agile. We co-founded the Agile Marketing Academy about 5 years ago. We started seeing interest in companies and using Agile in these different ways. And so I'll share some of those stories and case studies with you here today. So I'd like to start off by sharing this excerpt from an article in Forbes where they're talking about today's view of the opportunity and what we can see when we look at degree of business success over time. So if we're just looking at what can we see from today, we have our static prediction of where we will be tomorrow. However, our guest today is not necessarily going to be the most accurate. So if we can use an agile approach and use a bunch of shorter iterations as we're working, what that's going to allow us to do is get further in the long run because we're making adjustments and changes as we go. If we just pick where we want to be in the future from today and we do one steady plan, things might change and we have not built into our approach any kind of adapting or making adjustments for that. So it's important for us to keep an open mind at what could things be like in the future and how might we need to adjust in order to get there. So with a traditional waterfall approach, many of us may be used to seeing a traditional plan where you plan all the details up front. So every little detail, every task, what's happening when, and what we have with an agile approach is more of this iterative approach. So we'll still plan the details up front for what we know now, for just now, and we might have some larger chunks of work that we've identified in the future, but we don't need to break that work down quite yet until we get closer to the time. So what this allows us to do is only plan once rather than having to replan everything. And it helps us to only plan what we know at that time with the most recent information. This applies to development, and this concept also applies when we're looking at how we do marketing. So let's look at some of the attributes of Agile that work and apply with any type of project, whether it's in IT or even beyond IT. So when we're using an agile approach, we want to have more increased collaboration and we want to have cross-functional teams. So how can we have people collaborating more? And what's important that we're starting to recognize when we look at different companies that we're working with in their marketing departments is that a lot of the departments work in silos. So they're not talking to each other as much. And it's very challenging to be agile when you only have one piece of the picture. So what we want to look at is how can we increase collaboration within our team? So instead of just one person with this is my job and that's all I'm going to do, we want to encourage more of a team outcome and team goals. And then also looking at how can we increase collaboration among teams and across departments in the organization. We also want to look at delivering incrementally and iteratively providing value. So how can we be more effective in getting something out now to get real feedback from? So we want to have the empirical evidence, the empirical data of what works and who responds to our messaging in the market rather than just guessing or having a hypothesis. So we want to be putting something out sooner in messaging to get real data back and empirical evidence of where we should put more of our ad dollars and budget. And we also want to be inspecting and adapting and looking at continuously improving. So how can we be more effective in getting something out to market and then reflecting on how to improve on that with that real empirical evidence? I'd like to introduce next the Agile Marketing Framework. So when we talk about Agile marketing, this is based on the heart of Agile at its foundations. The heart of Agile was created by Alistair Coburn, and there's 4 simple verbs: collaborate, deliver, reflect, and improve. So if we're looking at how are we going to use Agile, we don't need a complex framework. It can be this simple as looking at what's at the heart of Agile and cycling through as we look at launching our different marketing campaigns. So when we look at collaborating, this is where we start with the user story. And many of you may be familiar with the user stories when we're looking at creating our product backlog on an Agile team. Well, this is a slight shift in how we apply them. So we have the format as a who, I need what, so that why. And we actually look at, okay, how can we look at who is our ideal target audience? So who is that ideal user or persona? And then what is it that they want, or what's the feature that we're going to specifically highlight to market to them? And why? So that why? Why is it that they need this? Why is it that this is going to be the most effective solution for their problems to go away? And so as we look at collaborating, we can look at different who's, what's, and why's. So as we can interchange the as a who, I need what, so that why, we can actually use those as our hypothesis for what's going to get us the best results in our marketing campaigns that we run. So next, as we step into deliver, this is where we actually deliver a targeted campaign. And this is one element of our funnel system. So if we are marketing to an intended audience, we might want to invite them to make a purchase. Or maybe we don't want them to make a purchase. We just want them to opt in to our mailing list so we can build rapport with them and we can nurture that potential client. So whatever your call to action is, we want to take one increment and actually put that out there. I think it was about 3.5 years ago, I was in Lisbon, Portugal, and I was working with an organization. It was a very large insurance company. Now, this company had been around for about 200 years and had 40% of the market share. And as we were planning out their Agile marketing campaigns and teaching them through a workshop, first said, what would be the next marketing campaign that you're going to launch? And they started building out these marketing campaigns with a visual funnel. So taking Post-it notes and putting up on the wall for each step of the marketing campaign. And so I asked the room, I said, what is the average time that it's going to take to launch that campaign to market? And the average time in the room, we had about 60 to 70 marketing team members there. And the average time of each of the campaigns was about 3 to 4 months. Now, when you think about that, 3 to 4 months, that seems like a long time. That's a quarter of a year. So that means that when we launch this marketing campaign, we're building all the pieces. There's going to be one big launch at the end of that time period. We're going to really hope that we have that campaign right, because if we're wrong, then we're missing all of that time. And so we'll have to do rework and we may not fully have benefited from it. So I asked them, what could be a minimum viable campaign? Many of us in Agile are used to the concept of the minimum viable product. How do we get a minimum viable product that we can put out the door so we can get real user feedback? And it's a similar concept when we look at the minimum viable campaign. What's that minimal increment look like so that we can launch and get real end user feedback? And so as we were looking to get the minimum viable campaign from these larger marketing campaigns, the average time when we asked that question again, the time that came back was 1 to 2 weeks. So originally they were looking at launching a marketing campaign that would take 3 or 4 months. And then when we started challenging them to think in a more agile way, they said, well, maybe in 2 weeks we could put this piece out and we could see what the feedback is. We could see if people like that messaging. We can see if that target audience resonates with what it is that we put out there. So as we then move on to the next stage, reflect. And this is where we want to review the data. And what's the empirical evidence of what was it that was working? What got results? What did people click on? Which ad did they like? And did any purchases come through, or did people opt in, or whatever our call to action was? And so then we want to look at improving. And this is where we may split test and try something different, make one change and see what that change is. So as we look at the heart of Agile, it's very powerful to collaborate, deliver, reflect, and improve. And there's really brilliance in the basics in how straightforward this is, because this works really, really well as we cycle through and apply an Agile marketing approach. So the Agile marketing framework is based on the heart of Agile here, and this is how that works. So as we look at the biggest marketing challenges that companies have had, a lot of times when we talk to marketing departments, usually there's something that gets missed in the right message to market match. So is our message connecting with our ideal customers? Or we put out our message and it's not quite there and we're not getting the results that we wanted. Now, that challenge gets magnified when you have campaign cycles that run too long without review. So if our campaign cycle is running for months and months, we don't actually look at what's being most effective. We may not even know what we're missing out on. We may be missing out on sales. We may be getting some sales and maybe that's okay, but maybe we could get way better results. And the third thing that we're noticing as a big challenge is that there's a dynamic environment out there that is constantly changing. And even in the last year, we've seen so many things change in the world that were very unexpected for companies. A lot of companies are going virtual and a lot of work has become more virtual, which means that we reach our consumers and our ideal users in many different ways. And so there's a different way that we need to connect with our customers and reach out to them with our messaging. So Agile really helps with each of these challenges. What I'd like to do next is I'd like to share a case study of one of the first clients that we were working with when we started applying Agile to how they did marketing. And we saw some incredible results. So this was several years ago. There was a company that we were working with and we got an initial increase in sales, and then the sales kind of went down a little bit, up and down, back and forth, and eventually kind of trending upward. So if you were to look at this chart, is this good revenue over time, over the course of a year? What do you think? Some people might say, yeah, it looks good because you have a big increase at the beginning. And yeah, it went down a little bit, but overall it's trending up. So maybe it's not that bad. Now, if you actually added a little more context to this, this is really, with the course of a year, is this really something that we want for growth? If we were to fast forward another year and carbon copy our results to the next year, is that the level of growth that we want? And when you look at that, the answer is probably no. If we had 3 years of this, that's probably not exactly what we want, because we kind of plateaued when you take a step back and look at the bigger picture. So the next question is, okay, well, what's possible? Well, we might need to do something different from what we've always been doing. We had some strategies, some sales were coming in, but there weren't really that many other things that we did different because something was working. And this is a situation where you don't know what you don't know. Sometimes we don't know how many sales are out there, but we're just not even tapping into that target audience. So after 6 months, we had over 300% increased revenue. And after a year, we saw 780% increased revenue. And this blew my mind when I saw it, because I was like, wow, this is not normal. And I remember that Nick was working with this client and I asked him, I was like, Nick, what did you do? And he said, I just did the Agile stuff that you taught me. I was like, yeah, but what exactly did you do? Because that's not normal. And people don't just start using Agile in different departments and getting these amazing results. So we broke down what happened and how we got those results. And we looked at ways that we could replicate that. And so what happened was we launched 5 campaigns that we ran to specific personas, and we used the user story format to identify the who, what, and why that we were going to target. And so my question to you is, where would you put your marketing dollars if these were the results that you saw? So we have 5 campaigns that were run. The first campaign was for people that had, let me back up and share a little bit more about what company this was. This is a company that sells acid-free coffee. And so they sell coffee that is healthier, it's more organic, and it's made with ingredients that are going to be softer and easier on your body because they're cleaner ingredients. There's no acid. And if you have any type of stomach pains or heartburn or different types of physical ailments, sometimes certain things that you eat or drink can activate that. And so we said, okay, who needs acid-free coffee? Well, what they had been doing as their normal marketing approach was the company was saying, hey, give us a try, get a free sample, and see if you like our product. And so they said, here's a free sample. This is healthier for you. There's health benefits to our coffee because there's no acid in it. And so when you think about that messaging, okay, yeah, I mean, healthy is good. Many of us want to be healthier. But if anyone here drinks coffee, I don't know about you, but the coffee drinkers that I know, they love their brand of coffee. They don't want to switch very easily. So, you're going to get some people that might try a free sample just to get a free bag of coffee, but not a lot of people are going to be convinced that easily. People are used to going to their favorite coffee place, or they have their special coffee maker at home that they like to use. So we asked ourselves this question: who really needs acid-free coffee? And we realized it was actually not just a nice to have thing. There's people that actually really needed a solution to this, because when they would drink coffee, they would actually be in physical pain. So the first campaign we ran was for people that had Crohn's disease. Second campaign was for people with colitis. The third campaign we ran for people that had ulcers. The fourth campaign was for people with pylori. And then we split test that against the fifth campaign, which was the free sample, which is what they were always doing. Now, when you look at this, obviously the third campaign is where we would probably want to put our marketing dollars. Because when you look at the clicks of interest or the views on our ad, people that had ulcers were looking at the ad way more than any other ad that we put out. So what's interesting is that it made it very clear very fast that there were a lot of people that had ulcers that like coffee, but every time they drank it, they would have physical pain. But sometimes they'd still drink the coffee because they needed their coffee to get through the day. And this is where we realize that's who truly needs our product. The people that need your product, when you can really connect on that message to market match. And we do this by having these short campaign cycles. And this also helps us when there's a dynamic changing market, right? So these are the challenges that we can overcome by using an agile approach. So short campaign cycles to yield results quicker, and see and split test and compare. And then from there, we're able to hone in on that messaging. We're able to dial it in until we can increase the conversions. And so when we look at this approach, this is what can get incredible, outstanding results, is when you're iterating, when you're adapting, when you're changing, when you're trying something new, something different from what you've always done. So over the last several years, over the last 5 years, we've been leading agile marketing courses around the world, from Shanghai, Singapore, Thailand, India, throughout the US. And we just led a class for a group in Lisbon, Portugal this year. And what's interesting is that regardless of geographic location, regardless of the industries, we're seeing that this approach helps companies across all these different dynamics. And so it's exciting to see how agile marketing can be so effective for so many different groups. And so the results that we got from that first case study that we just shared, we actually launched a case study program, and we started working with companies from a variety of different industries to see if we could replicate those kind of results. And the first company that we worked with, it was a $5,000 training program, and it involved weekly coaching to work with them one-on-one to help them get results. And the first company that worked with us, their first agile marketing campaign brought back over $30,000. So for $5,000 investment, they made $30,000. And at that point, I was like, Nick, we have to standardize. What are these concepts? What are these techniques that are working? And so that's what's in the curriculum here today. The Certified Agile Marketing Specialist course is based off of the empirical data that we have seen work with clients to get amazing results with Agile applied to marketing. So what is Agile marketing? I want to share a little bit more about the concept and define it a little bit more thoroughly. So Agile marketing is a way of helping us to adopt an iterative process so that we can get fast results, but also sustainable growth. Now, the way that works is that We have shorter campaign cycles so that we can see results sooner. We can adjust and inspect and adapt to change if anything needs to be different. And then we want to make those adjustments, inspecting and adapting over time so that we can have that sustainable growth over time. We also want to focus on customer relationships that carry the most value. So we don't want to just try to sell to anyone that's going to buy our product. What we want to do is we want to focus on who truly needs our product. Who's really going to benefit from using our product? How's it going to help their problems go away? And those are our ideal customers. And if we can really connect with our ideal customers, we don't want to be everything to everybody. We want to be very specific solution to a very specific niche of people. That's how you can really connect on your marketing message. So we want to focus on those customer relationships that have the most value because they are our ideal target audience. We also want to organize our marketing channels into filtering, educating, and selling. So how can we not just always go in for the sale out the gate, but actually bring people in where we can nurture them? We can share more value with them. We can explain to them how this solution is going to help them and then offer the sale later. We don't necessarily need the sale off the first interaction. And we also want to create the systems and messaging so we can find and nurture our ideal customers. So how can we communicate effectively and dial in what that message is so that we can really truly connect with that ideal target audience? So as we started working with companies on applying Agile to how they did marketing, we noticed that there was a group that had written an Agile Marketing Manifesto. Now, many of us are familiar of the Agile Manifesto, and it was interesting to see that Agile Marketing Manifesto had been created. And so as Nick and I were looking at this, we were like, wow, this makes a lot of sense. And I was very relieved and excited that we support everything here in this manifesto. And so if we look at some of these concepts here and these values, they said that we are discovering better ways of creating value for our customers and for our organizations through new approaches to marketing. And through this work, we have come to value these things. So as we look at these values, the first one, validated learning over opinions and conventions. Can we put out a marketing message that we have actual data supporting why that's the right message to use, instead of here's what I think the messaging should be and here's how I think it should work? Look, this is interesting because what we're seeing in a lot of large organizations is that their departments are split to where the people doing the work don't actually see the results of what is delivered to market. And then there's a group that's giving the direction to the marketing team, but a lot of time it feels like it's their personal opinion. Well, I don't like that title, you should change it. Well, that's an opinion. That's not anything that's validated learning. So we could change it, sure, but is one or two people's opinions just because they're of a higher seniority the right way to go? What if we were to focus on putting out multiple messages and then seeing which message got more responses? What about that? That would be an example of validated learning. Another value is customer-focused collaboration over silos and hierarchy. So as we look at focusing on collaborating with our customer, asking them, hey, what's resonating? What do you like about this? How could this serve you? Rather than we're in our silo as an organization and we're just gonna put stuff out there and we hope it hits. Third, adaptive and iterative campaigns over big bang campaigns. So can we put out a campaign that we're going to make adjustments to? We know we're going to make changes instead of one big campaign where it's all or nothing. That 3 or 4 month campaign where we really hope that it resonates. Fourth, the process of customer discovery over static prediction. Can we embrace learning what our customers want rather than standing here today and saying, well, here's what I think it's going to be? The fifth value here, flexible versus rigid planning. Can we be more flexible in how we work instead of just making the plan up front once and sticking to that plan the whole time? Things might change. Something might come up in the market. There might be a reason to do something different. Sixth, responding to change over following a plan. This value is actually the exact same as the Agile Manifesto. It's carried over, and I think it's makes sense, and it's really a great thing to think about. Like, can we plan to be ready for change? Can we not be surprised by that? Can we build into our approach that we will respond to change because we know that things might shift, instead of only sticking to the plan that we once thought up weeks ago, months ago, maybe even years ago? And I really like this last value: many small experiments over a few large bets. Can we try multiple small things instead of trying to swing for the fences every time? Can we reduce the risk and test our messaging until we see and dial in what's getting the right response? So with the Agile Marketing Manifesto, these are a lot of the values that are supportive of having that Agile mindset as we look at applying this to marketing. Many of you may be familiar with the 80-20 principle. And just to recap how this works, these are just some stats off of Wikipedia. So if we look at the concept of 20% of the effort can create 80% of the results, this is the type of mindset shift we want to have as we're looking at what we're doing with putting out our marketing message. So the richest 20% of people in the world have over 80% of all the income. Like, think about that for a second. 80% of problems can be attributed to 20% of the causes. So instead of trying to solve all these independent problems, what if we went to the root cause and fixed that? And that would fix all kinds of problems. 80% of a company's profits come from 20% of their customers. Okay, so 80% of the profits come from 20% of their customers. That's interesting. What if we focus more on our ideal customer rather than trying to get all types of customers? What if we said, who are our best customers, and let's double down on that? And you can see these other examples here. 80% of a company's sales come from 20% of their products. Well, what if we just focused on the 20% of the products that were getting the most sales? Why are we wasting 80% of what else we sell? Why are we even messing with that, right? And so when we look at the 80-20 rule, this concept, we see these patterns time and time again, that if you are doing work and you're getting some results, well, what if you focused on dialing in on what could get you greater results and really honing in on that? How can we put 20% of the effort in to get the 80% of the results? So I'd like to share some case studies and stories from some companies that are pretty well known. Now, we have not worked with all of these companies individually, but what's interesting is a couple of years ago, we started really getting a lot of being contacted by companies asking about Agile marketing. And I remember saying to Nick, well, what happened? Why is there so much interest? Don't get me wrong, it's good that there's interest, but I'm curious why this started now. A couple of Google searches yielded that the biggest companies in the world are now applying Agile into marketing and getting results. So, okay, Coca-Cola's saying that Agile marketing is helping them. That's why companies are starting to look at Agile marketing. Got it. Okay, cool. So if you look at this, their global IT leader of digital marketing at Coca-Cola was talking about how Agile helped them for the success of their World Cup campaign. So they described how they used this supposedly predictable waterfall model, but it would have all this stress leading up to the night before a launch, and that was overwhelming. But when they used Agile, they would safely finish weeks in advance of the deadline. We look at Adobe. Their senior manager of industry strategy and marketing was talking about how Agile marketing is helping them to adapt and refocus their marketing efforts to respond successfully to changes in customer behavior, marketing conditions, or any other business direction that they might need to go. And so being able to change, adapt, make those adjustments on the fly, companies are realizing that's essential, especially with so much being online. Almost everything is on the internet these days. We need to respond to any changes as fast as possible. We look at Salesforce. They said the X factor is Agile content creation. And I really, really like this quote from the principal of marketing insights at Salesforce. He said, we must realize the amount of marketing we must do is too great, and the odds of failure are too high without following a process of iteration. Think about that for a second. There are so many factors when we look at putting out a marketing message in the world. And if we're not iterating, if we're not looking at the data and responding, we're just guessing. So can we guess when smaller things are at stake? Can we shift and adjust? Can we look at, okay, what is it that we could do differently to get a better result or a greater result? General Mills. So Agile is about simplicity, reliability, and response. And can we deliver the best possible experience? And so as you look at all of these large companies starting to apply Agile in different ways, and specifically with marketing, it just speaks for itself that there's something there. There's something there in how we are thinking and how we are working. And this is why we see this big theme in the industry of business agility. Companies are saying, we have to do something different. We need to do something different from what we've always done in order to stay relevant in the marketplace. So as we're looking at that and we're looking at the way that we work, Agile has proven itself in development. And as we start to dabble with Agile applied to other departments, we're seeing that it also holds true as we look at marketing. Xerox, it helps to keep up with demand from customers and internal marketing teams. We knew we needed to simplify how work was being processed. And Agile methods have made the team better at predicting and meeting their delivery dates. So when we can get more predictive, when we can get those results that we're hoping, when we're not trying to play catch up, that's going to completely shift how we work for a very positive way. Even Pepsi with Gatorade's marketing. So visualization around key topics and product and campaign launches, monitoring social media and responding real time and inspecting and adapting. It's helping them increase engagement with product education and having way more response than they've otherwise seen. So as we start to look at how all these different companies are using it, this is something that we put in our Agile Marketing course, Certified Agile Marketing Specialist. Our course is dual accredited with IC Agile, their ICP MKG certification. And also we have just completed an accreditation with the Heart of Agile Academy as well by Alistair Coburn. So when we start to look at how Agile can be applied, we're used to looking at how do we break down the work? How can the work be shifted or the work be adjusted into these smaller increments? And it's a very similar concept when we apply to how we do our marketing. And what I like a lot about marketing and what's different from development is when we're looking at launching to market sooner and we're looking at how we're developing the product, yeah, we can apply an Agile approach and we might prioritize different features. We might release to market sooner and we can then add on more features that are more relevant to what our end consumer wants, and we can release those features. But whether releasing these features versus those features, okay, it's a better quality product, but sometimes it's hard to see the results or feel the results of getting to market with a product. Now, when we apply Agile to marketing, what's really cool about that is that there's dollars associated with it. So we can see crystal clear, did this campaign get us the result we hoped? Was this effective? And as we ask ourselves that question, we can actually see the real engagement by the clicks, by the views on the page, by the dollars that come into the bank account. And so it's really, really exciting to see the real results that are coming back, and we can actually then make those adjustments. Now, what's really cool is if we can get in a good cycle with development and marketing. So we're developing features and then we're marketing the MVP, that minimum viable product that we put out to market. So as you think about this concept of Agile, you might think, okay, I could see how that can apply to marketing. And there's two different ways that we want to break this down. So we have a discovery process and a delivery process. So with the discovery process, this is where we're going through a sequence of really getting clear on what's the problem we're trying to solve. And then we go through the thought process of looking at, okay, now that we've gotten deep into the problem we're trying to solve, what is the real value of the solution? And so if we can connect the problem we're trying to solve with the value of the solution, that's how we get the message to market match. And then we can build out our Agile sales letter and our messaging that really connects. And we have 15 crucial questions that help you get deep into the problem and solution. And so then that's the discovery process. As we go through the delivery process, this is where you can use either a flow-based approach or a time-boxed approach. So with Agile, that might be a Kanban approach for flow or a Scrum-based approach for having a time-box approach. And so when you start to look at how are we working and how can we shift and be different in what's happening, you know, marketing departments, they get requests all the time, the same way that our software development teams get requests. Hey, I need this messaging. I need this graphic. I need this immediately, right? We have an urgent thing that came up. And so, you know, we can look at the prioritization of that work. We can look at, you know, we're releasing in these smaller iterations and having a mini campaign or just that minimal increment done that we can put out. And so we're constantly getting this feedback, and that's helping us enhance every time we put out an increment to our marketing funnel. We're able to update it. We're able to adjust it. And what that's going to do is that's going to help us be smarter with our marketing dollars. So now we're putting out money toward the ads that are working, and we're cutting loose the ads that are not working. So in summary, as we look at Agile marketing, it really is effective. We're seeing it with clients that we're working with. We're hearing feedback from teams that we've trained around the world that it works, it applies. We're seeing the biggest companies in the world that are now using Agile marketing. So it's very exciting to see how these concepts apply across industries and geographic regions. And we'd like to encourage you to think about and look at ways that you can start to apply Agile in the marketing, introducing these concepts to the marketing department at your organization, and how you can start to look for ways to apply the Agile mindset in how you are thinking and how you are approaching the work as well. So we want to invite you to put any comments in the chat for any questions that you might have. We wanted to leave some time for questions here. I see one. Feel free to type comments in the chat if you have any questions about Agile marketing. So let me look at this first one. As a traditional approach, an organization has a yearly marketing budget. Based on that, they plan for other involvements. However, if there's a huge gap to adjust the charge plan with the prior yearly plan, what would be the Agile approach to address this issue? All right, so this is a challenge that it kind of applies to budgeting for a project, whether it's a software development project or launching the product, or with marketing, right? So a lot of times, large organizations, they're going to have their system in place for doing budgeting, regardless of the methodology that you use. So whether you're using a waterfall approach where you plan all the details up front, I mean, usually we're still given, here's your budget. I mean, we often speculate, how do people come up with these budgets? Is it like the, you know, check which way is the wind blowing? Okay, this feels like a good number, $200,000. That's your budget. That's all you got. And so, you know, however these budgets are come up with up front, you know, sometimes we'll do a high level plan to kind of estimate it. Regardless of which methodology of the approach that you're using in order to do the work, the budgeting process might be similar because that's how that organization works. So how can we, you know, we're looking at the yearly plan from the year before, and we're using that as an indicator of what we might budget for this next year. Well, that's a place to start. That could be a reasonable approach. And, you know, how can we start to use Agile in the way that we work? You know, when we start to look at an Agile approach to budgeting and looking at what might we need, there's a couple things you can do. So one thing that we'll talk to some companies about is they might already have their budget identified. And so they've got their budget identified. And then the question is, okay, is it a risk to do a different approach? And so we might say, hey, can you give us a 25% of your budget? If you're already spending $10,000 a month, can we take a quarter of that? Can we take $2,500? And can we start to look at what could we try and iterate with? So we're not disrupting the original campaigns. We're trying new stuff with a portion of the budget. And if we can bring in more money with that different marketing campaign, then that's going to probably justify, we probably want to put more of those marketing dollars toward the thing that's working. So we can start to shift the budget into the Agile marketing campaigns. So that's one thought, right? As you go, we want to look at, remember that first picture with Forbes, we got today's plan of the opportunity and where we can see where we might be from today's view versus those series of small iterative plans. Similar concept with the budget. We have an idea of what our budget's going to be based on last year, but we're not really sure. What's going to happen now is going to tell us if that's effective or not. Now, if we are starting to really get down our cost of customer acquisition, we're starting to really get focused in on what's the right messaging to get the response, and we're starting to get those sales coming in. Then we might look at increasing the budget. If we're putting in $2 into our marketing, and for every $2 we put in, we get $10 back. Now let's multiply that by 100. Let's do that 100 times. Now let's double that. Let's do that 200 times, right? When you get this down to a science, it's almost like, it almost feels like, it's like you're putting some money in, you're getting this much money back. Like, it's almost like you're printing money from, we know that this messaging works. And if we can reach this many people, we're going to get this many leads and we're going to close this many people from that. It really can be broken down to a science. We can really tell what's going to work, and once we see what's working, we can add more ad budget there. So it's interesting when you look at the budgeting. So what I would say is, you might have your ultimate, like, here's like the ballpark budget that you're getting, but as we're iterating and inspecting and adapting and dialing in our marketing campaigns, we may be able to free up more budget if we are getting the results. As we get those results in sales, we may be able to allocate more funding for it. Great question, thank you. Any other questions as we look at Agile marketing? So we'll leave just a few more minutes for some questions to pop up in the chat. We are actually looking at hosting an Agile marketing training class on the Bangladesh time zone. And so I'm curious if anyone would be interested. Comment in the chat if you're interested in learning more, or if your company might be interested in applying Agile marketing. We would love to be able to share some free resources with you, future webinars, either on site for companies or other resources. And if you're interested in learning more about Agile marketing, would love to invite you to connect and stay connected so that we can really look at creating more awareness. A lot of companies, they don't necessarily realize what results they're not getting. When we look at what those results are, even in that example with the writing on coffee example, what we saw was they were getting some sales, and that was good enough. That people were happy that there were sales coming in. They didn't even think to try anything different. And so a lot of times we don't know what we don't know. We don't even know how many more sales are out there that we're not aware of because we're doing things the way we've always done them. So it always starts with the mindset shift. We want to look at, okay, how do I look at this work differently? How can I think differently, act differently? What can I do that's going to help me be most effective? And what can we try differently to get different results? And that's the Agile way. It's the experimentation. It's being curious. It's trying something new, and it's iterating. And so I'd love to encourage you to, as you go throughout your work and you interact with other people at your company, bring this up in conversation. Ask questions. What are your thoughts about how we could use this? What are some things that we could start to apply this to? And you might be surprised at where that conversation goes. I see another question here in the chat. How to avoid organizational process while using Agile, which is unavoidable, actually. Yes, the organizational process. These companies probably have years upon years of ways of doing things, right? Especially the larger the organization. And so we can't avoid all of the process when using Agile, but what we might be able to do is get incremental improvement. And so if there's a process where we're usually getting all of the information up front and we're building these big marketing campaigns and then we're launching them all at once, that's that's getting us some results, but we might be able to get better results. So what I like to recommend is, can you try a pilot project? Can you show the results? Can you try something and then build upon it so that you can make sure that we're getting the results that we want? We're trying something different. We're seeing what could be better. So when you can try something and then have better results, that's going to open up the conversation for changing the process. So it takes some courage and it takes a little risk sometimes to try something new. But this may be where you take a project and you say, hey, let's try Agile marketing on this project over here. Or, as mentioned earlier, let's just take a small part of this budget and let's try using an Agile marketing approach for part of the budget. Not the whole thing, just for part of it. We're spending the money anyway. Let's test with that extra budget. And that's where we can start to really get support in adjusting the existing process, is when there's results that you can show. So if you can ever get approval for a pilot project or something like that, that's a great opportunity to start to apply these techniques and then show results to then get buy-in for changing more of the process. So it is an incremental approach. We want to do a little bit here, a little bit there, and we want to create that organizational buy-in. Now, if your organization is using Agile already in software development or in the IT department, that might invite that conversation a lot easier, right? So look for who's the Agile champion in your organization. Who is the highest paid person that cares about Agile that you can escalate things to? And so highly recommend to, look at showing small wins. And then as you share small wins, that's going to be what can help to encourage the process to change if there's a process that's making it more challenging for Agile to be there. All right, we've got a couple more questions here. How would you deal with members of an organization who might be resistant to change? Ah, yes, this is a classic Agile question. People often resist change when they don't understand it. They resist change when it's uncomfortable. And so what I think like the real angle is, the real thing that you want to look at is, how can we communicate the value or show people how this might work for them, right? Like, so what are the benefits of Agile? So if people are resisting the change, how can we look for what are those positives, right? Because people typically resist change. But what can we do to help them feel empowered? Help them feel like they have a say in the matter, that they have a choice. There's things that we can possibly do to help invite them in the process of moving toward Agile to where their voice feels heard. Where people often check out is when they don't feel heard or like anyone cares about their perspective. And so if we can help to involve people in that transition, sometimes helping them feel like, hey, this is an approach where we're going to listen to your feedback. We're going to listen to you and help try to remove organizational impediments and things that are in your way. This process is to help you. I think it's really inviting people to see the value that they're going to get as a team member. All right, so we're coming up to the end of our time box here. And we've got maybe the time for one more question. Let's see here. We've got, will Agile methodology offer to identify customer behavioral analysis for targeted campaigns? So there's definitely analysis that we want to do. As we're doing that, reflecting and improving, we want to be constantly looking at what's working, what's not working. And so we can look at the customer behaviors. We can track the customer journey. And yes, those are all things that we're going to take into account as we update the marketing campaign for that next iteration. So yes, built into the Agile approach is going to be looking at the consumer behavior, looking at the results, looking at the empirical evidence of what's working. So thank you everyone for all the questions. Love seeing the interest in Agile marketing. I'm going to put a link to my LinkedIn profile if you'd like to stay connected. And one of the things that Tawfiq and I have talked about is actually hosting an Agile marketing course for the Bangladesh time zone. So if you are interested, please reach out, comment in the chat, send a message to the organizers of this event, and feel free to ask in follow-up. If you not sure yet today, go back to your company, talk about it, and start asking some questions. questions and let us know if there's interest. If there's enough interest, then we'll be putting together a class over the next couple of months and would love to help you better understand how to apply Agile to your marketing.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Maria. Thanks for doing this webinar for us, our community members. And as you said, we have Agile marketing classes in future. So please feel free to knock me, everyone, in this webinar. And you can also talk to your colleagues and friends, community members. And I hope you guys will join in Agile marketing class and enjoy the course.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. And please reach out. Let us know if you want to learn more about Agile marketing, and we'd be happy to share more information. Thank you.
I must say it was really a great session. Yeah. So I was really appreciated, and it was really appealing how as a lives with marketing, how the manifesto was worked. And we are really appreciated, thankful to you, Maria, for managing time for this evening and shared your experience with us. Hope we will keep this vibe on upcoming day. Thank you all. Thank you. Goodbye. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you.